American people in this country have been suffering under oppression since they were first brought over as slaves when settlers originally started coming to America. They gained some freedom after the Civil War, but still faced segregation. In the early 1960s, African Americans started to fight for their rights. Leaders emerged such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and the beginnings of equality appeared across the nation. The following documentary is a summary of the civil rights movement. Sit-ins were a popular form of rebellion for the nonviolent protest. It had been a favorite method of the African Americans since 1943, when it was first used to desegregate a coffee shop in Chicago, Illinois. A sit-in is where a group of people sit down at a segregated public place. The people would stay in their seat until they were served, and caused quite a predicament for the business owners.
Oh, hey, this looks nice. What's in here? You know this ain't the color section. Y'all's gotta get out of here.
We can sit here. Segregation is illegal nowadays.
Fine, but y'all aren't getting served sitting here.
Well, hi, Volvo. What's all this?
Hey there, maid. Just these gosh darn protesters ruining my day.
Oh, well, that's no good. We'll see about that now.
Hey, bud. Oh, hey there, Bubba. May tells me you got some folks making trouble around here.
Sure thing, Joe. Howdy, Billy.
Hey, Bubba.
Hey now, what's all this? You and you, come with me. We're going down to the station.
We didn't do nothing.
Are you back talking? Let's go, you worthless piece of black trash. Now go on and keep that filthy mouth shut.
As you can see, the protest caused the businesses to have their regular customers disrupted and lose some potential customers. Often the police arrested not the people who were viciously beating up the protesters, but arrested the people who had done nothing more than sit down in a seat that they had every legal right to sit in. Thousands of people were involved in the sit-in technique, and by the end of 1960, around 3,600 students had served time in jail for their participation. In 1960, the Supreme Court of the United States saw a case, Boynton versus Virginia, in which they added to their previous ban on segregation concerning interstate buses. CORE and SNCC combined forces and sent out a group of people to test this ruling in 1961. They began their journey by departing first from Washington, D.C. on May 4th, 1961. Here we are, folks. You got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Man, that was the nicest bus I've ever been on. Air conditioning. What the heck? Wow! That really hurts.
Ow! How did the other freedom riders endure what they did at Anderson, Alabama?
Ow! I don't know. At least our bus wasn't bursting into flames. I would have been really afraid if we were beaten worse.
No kidding. At least federal marshals are helping, though. They still didn't accomplish much for continuing that vision.
The original destination of the Freedom Riders was New Orleans, but it was never met. Their attempt was stopped in Jackson, Mississippi, where the riders were arrested upon leaving the bus. However, their courage inspired those who were fighting for equality, and the coverage of the violence helped garner more support for the movement as a whole. Birmingham, Alabama, called the most segregated city in America by Martin Luther King Jr. It was the scene of a national horror show. It was planned as boycotts of stores and integration of churches. The events in Birmingham started off peacefully, with the protesters being charged with civil disobedience and spending time in jail. However, the massive march sparked something in the officers, and the nation watched.
We are equal.
Don't shop where there's discrimination.
Look at them disrupting our city. Let's break this up.
Ah!
My leg! Somebody help! The dog has my leg!
The incident in Birmingham in 1963 was broadcasted across the country news. It shocked people, even though they were against the movement for colored people. Horrified by the police brutality, the fire hoses the police used would strip the bark off of trees, and the dogs were trained police animals. More than a match for young protesters. The publicity from Birmingham caused a broader expansion of people across the nation to see the civil rights movement in a more favorable light, and it was a giant success for the nonviolent demonstrators.
Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Enjoy ice cold Coke right now. Get zing, what a feeling with ice cold Coke right now. Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Zing, what a feeling with the Coke. Ice cold, ice cold. For real refreshment, reach for the real thing. Ice cold Coke right now. Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Zing, what a feeling with the Coke. Ice cold. Enjoy ice cold Coke right now.
In August of 1963, a civil rights bill was being pushed through Congress by JFK. Leaders of the movement decided to march on the Capitol in order to gain more support for the bill and hopefully achieve its ratification. Over 200,000 people came to show their support for jobs and freedom.
No way! It's Joan Baez and Bob Dylan.
Look, it's Sammy Davis Jr. And who is he talking to? Oh my goodness, it's Jackie Robinson.
Shh, shh, shh. Martin Luther King Jr. is about to talk.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
The King's speech awed the nation and had an impact on everyone who saw it. This is probably the most famous speech, and yet with his skill, the bill was not able to be passed through Congress. However, it became a rallying point and gave courage and determination to everyone who was fighting for the civil rights movement. During the civil rights movement, not everyone was preaching the idea of nonviolence. Malcolm X, a black nationalist, including the Black Panthers, had a more confrontational approach to achieving equality. When the peaceful activists would sing "We Shall Overcome," supporters of this segment would be singing "We Shall Overrun." These more militant members sought not to live in harmony with the whites, but instead wished to live completely separate.
No sane black man really wants integration. No sane white man really wants integration. No sane black man really believes that the white man will ever give the black man anything more than token integration. No! The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that for a black man in America, the only solution is complete separation from the white man. The American black man should be focusing on his efforts towards building his own businesses and decent homes for himself. As other ethnic groups have done, let the black people, wherever possible, however possible, patronize their own kind, starting those ways to build up the black race's ability to do for itself. The only way the black man is ever going to get any respect.
With emotional speeches and a method that many felt was easier to understand and relate to, Malcolm X and the black nationalist branch of the civil rights movement had many followers. Malcolm X greatly influenced Stokely Carmichael, a leader of SNCC, who was largely involved in creating the idea of black power, and influenced the formation of Black Panthers. Malcolm X was affected by his journey to Mecca, and upon his return to America, he had begun to join the nonviolent demonstrators. 9 months after his change of heart, Malcolm X was shot and killed in February 1965. All the protests and the work of every person involved in the quest for racial equality eventually led up to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the passage of the 24th Amendment. As a result, discrimination became banned in every form across the country, yet the leaders still pressed on. They began to work on branching out the government to include other minorities, and it was during this quest that tragedy struck.
It's gonna be a long day. Do you need anything, Dr. G?
No, I'm all right. I'm just gonna go on the balcony and think for a while.
The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. unleashed violent riots across the nation. Enraged African Americans set fire and looted over 120 cities and killed around 50 people. President Johnson sent in troops to help calm the mob, but it took over 50,000 of them to bring control back to the country. The Civil Rights Movement was a long and difficult battle involving both blacks and whites. It succeeded in ending the discriminatory practices in the South in the legal ways, but people are still fighting to eliminate the segregation in people's actions as well. The 1960s allowed African Americans to achieve many equalities, and much of the movement, the sex as a whole, can be traced back to one man who had a dream.